Alright, so this is going to be the VoD review for your Braum game, Temeria 315. Before I go any further, looking that your previous game was the Leona game, I think this is probably an accident here. The fact that your runes didn't change Aftershock over to Guardian, because I see in all of your other games with him you do have Guardian appropriately. It's worth pointing out because it actually cost you big time over the course of this game. So it's kind of used as a teaching point and it was an accident, but the effect that it has will actually serve to be very useful, I think, in actually demonstrating how strong Guardian is on somebody like Braum. But when you look at like pro builds right here, Guardian is just so far in a way the rune you can take. You just don't take Aftershock on him. But it was an accident, seeing that your Leona game was before that, so we're just gonna let that go. I do have a script to go along with. I'm just going to give some extra detail to some of the timestamps along with the guide. It's going to be linked in the description of this video. But here's stuff that's always good to look at before a video starts, because this tells you where you made bigger mistakes and where the penalty of those mistakes or the benefit of your successes. It's very easily seen in a graph. So like when I see Soraka's experience graph shooting up like this, you know what happens at 26 minutes that she gets so fed, because when you compare, you know, Jinx to, she gets it as well. The gold chart tends to not be as useful. Like you don't see this big gap that happens in comparison to this one. Generally XP is more important than gold, and this kind of demonstrates that. But after 33 minutes is where you guys definitely throw and like they take off and win the game. But this is where you can kind of see the effect of where experience really does tell the tale of what's happening. For example, Graves got really ahead of the Vi, but the Vi eventually caught back up, you know, around 31 to 33 minutes, and then they went on to eclipse you guys and win the game. In terms of your build, excuse me, I think your build was just fine. But until the end, when you started running low on gold, I don't think the Bramble Vest was a good ability or a good purchase, because that's a frontline item. I think against two APs in Zoe and Singed and a hard diver in Vi, I think a locket would have been what you would want to spend this money that you spent on Bramble Vest and Ruby Crystal. Because when you're up against such heavy dive against like Vi and Singed, Vi is kind of like this guaranteed damage that is going to hit your AD carry. But it's so telegraphed, and you see her coming after she presses R, that with things like Guardian, Summoner Heal, you know, you have all of these things to dampen her burst. So I think Locket, with the fact that they also had two AP threats, would be the better purchase here, rather than the Thornmere you were building. It's also worth pointing out, I looked through a lot of op.gg stats to show which items are best on Braum. He does so much better with Merc Treads than Ninja Tabbies that like the stat almost looks kind of awkward. So we're actually going to look that up real quick. We're going to go through here. As you can see, the win rate with Ninja Tabbies is 45%, 28% pick rate, and the win rate with Merc Treads is 56%. This is drastic. Unless you are up against nothing but auto attackers, I think this shows that Merc Treads are far and away what you need on Braum. Personally, I think the reason for this is that Braum is only as good as his ability to like stand in front of you or move his shield around in a team fight. So Merc Treads, along with Unflinching, that's the amount of CC reduction in Tenacity is going to allow you to absorb CC and still like kite properly. That way you don't stay stuck, or you move your shield as you need to move it in order to block certain projectiles. Because when you're blocking projectiles, that's ultimately like what Ninja Tabbies do. They block the projectiles that are auto attacks. So when you have this big shield that can kind of dampen these auto attacks for you, Ninja Tabbies lose a lot of value, especially with the recent nerf. So in general, I think you should be building Merc Treads on Braum. I think that covers most of what I wanted to look at before the video. Yeah, so we're just gonna go into the game here. A little black screen for a second, but everything should be fine. There we go. Okay, so this is you at the start of the game. This is where I say you take way too much damage from this red buff, right? You at full health would be 657. I know you want to help leash this for Graves, but the 3 auto attacks that you throw at that thing cost you like 150 health. And then it gets worse because you walk into lane here. They've already gotten a push advantage on you, right? They're definitely already ahead here. And then you walk up and take too much damage. You still have your 3 potions, which you need to have already drank one or tried to use your relic stacks here. Because, look at, you're already standing behind Ashe, you know what I mean? You kind of need her to walk up and like get level 2. But the fact that you're letting yourself be such low HP when you could be healthier and you're still getting poked really takes away from your power in lane as a tank support, right? Like, they ultimately just bullied you out super hard. Now, before we watch how this ends up turning out, because it's a little bit of luck, but you do end up baiting them in, what you should be doing instead, when you see that they're already going to get level 2 before you guys, you can't just walk up like this. Because that's 2 ranged champions versus 1 melee. Sure, you have bone plating and it helps, but all you did was land 1 Q on her. Which, you know, it didn't really do that much damage. And the thing with Soraka is that every time she lands a Q, she's just going to heal herself back up again. So that Q that you landed on her with the 3 auto attacks from the minions, you know, it hurt a little bit. But once she lands another auto attack and another Q and you start taking poke again, you know, look at her, she's full HP. Or she was a second ago. The advantage that you were able to give to them by not properly pushing back and just taking too much poke really makes you just very weak here. When you have all these relic stacks and you have these 3 health potions early game like this, you need to be drinking them and using them. Combine that with the 160 damage that you didn't have to take from red but did, and you just started laying off on a really bad foot. We're gonna walk this out a little bit. You do tough this out pretty well. But this fight could have been a lot better if you didn't have to run your ass off and got beat to level 2 so hard. You were going to get beat to level 2 anyway because they had a push advantage, but you got beat to level 2 and you were already poked down, which is a double whammy. But we're kind of going to skip ahead here. Here's where you soak a lot of the XP, so by the time Ashe gets back into lane, right, like she only just got level 2 and you're approaching level 4. So when there's such this huge level difference between the support and the AD carry, that means that you're going to have to pull more weight in lane. And small plays like that, this is how you outplay, right here. She gets some poke in, you're properly maintaining range. See, like, where was all this range play when you were level 1, right? You were trying too hard to get level 2 when you were just taking poke instead of actually, like, playing back and being patient. But you're actually managing your distance now. And the end result are trades that are much better for you. You end up managing range really well over the course of the game with team fighting. I just really want to stress how important that level 1 and like the first 30 seconds of lane really are. And the amount of free damage that you can't let something like that happen, especially when you have all this HP in your inventory. Like, you have biscuits, right? You have relic shield, you have these health potions. That's there to keep this from happening, you sitting in lane with half HP. Because this half HP makes you a lot less confident in fighting. Then when you're not confident, you can't even use your bone plating to fight with it because it gets poked off before you can even use it. So what you would do instead in this situation, this is leading up to the next timestamp where they're pushing this huge wave in on you. You would just let this come to you. This wave is huge, right? If you look at this enemy wave. These minions are going to annihilate your minions. Nice cube, by the way. That was nice. So there's no need for your Ashe to walk up here, right? Now I know you aren't the Ashe in this scenario, but you kind of walk up a little bit here. Like, you're trying to stay in range of XP. If you stand a little further back, I think you would show the kind of example for her that she needs to get back. Or just give her, you know, give her a yellow ping, or 2 yellow pings, and then if she walks up to the wave, give her 2 danger pings. You can definitely influence your AD carry movement, and you should be when you're a tank. In certain ways. You don't want to be like a ridiculous and overbearing about it, but if she's not safe, then you need to let her know. But this is kind of just mostly how this lane phase goes. You're getting demolished in farm, but we're gonna skip through most of this because once you get to team fighting, it gets a lot better. So we're gonna fast forward real hard. We're actually gonna skip to 750 right here. Because really, I just want to give context to some of the stuff in the guide. A lot of this stuff is just not very... It's a hard lane to play because your Ashe isn't that great. You got off to a rough start. In the guide, I make a lot of gripes about your Aftershock over Guardian here, but looking back, that was an accident, like left over from your Leona game. You actually pull out some of these trades quite well, considering how far behind you are, right? You protected Ashe right there, you got her damage out, and that's not even with Guardian. If you had Guardian movement speed and maybe Ashe wasn't so far behind, you guys could probably turn that. So in a situation where you don't make as much mistakes level 1 and take so much free damage, I think a play like this would actually be turned around. But we're going to skip forward here. I don't think there's anything wrong with your buys. You do a lot of warding and counter warding for a lot of the game, which is good because your jungle and your top laner were ahead, and you were controlling a lot of the vision around there. We're just going to leave this on 8x for a minute. Yeah, that's what I wanted to look at. Alright, the laning's going good. Despite the disadvantage in items, and the fact that your ADC is 2 levels down, this fight goes quite well. Now, if we watch how this fight gets started, you can see Vi on the minimap being chased by Graves, right? She's coming, you go to cut her off, but she's coming down. You realize it a little late, potentially. I think if a few things just go slightly better here, you know, Ashe isn't level 6, you know, you have Guardian, then this play actually is easy. So a lot of these plays that you're making in lane are quite good. It's just kind of a rough start that you got off to that leaves you having to fight uphill battles every time. So the confidence that you're showing in a lot of these fights, you could be showing a lot more on even games, or if you have a lead, I think you could afford to be a little bit more aggressive. That one was good. We're just going to watch that one real quick. The important thing to note here that I mentioned in the text is that if we look at the items here, you have Ninja Tab eyes and health and more armor, and this Jinx does not have boots. Rather than throwing that Q, your shield placement there is also a little iffy. This Jinx almost kills Ashe. What you do instead here, or we watch it one more time, you don't have to throw that Q, you could just walk directly in front of her here. See how many auto attacks this Jinx got off on this Ashe? If it went a little differently, this Jinx probably would have killed her. You need to be more focused on getting between the danger right here and your AD carry. That the Q that you threw and then the walk, kind of walking up here rather than walking between Ashe and her, almost gets the Ashe killed. Now it ends up working out, but in cases where you have the huge movement speed advantage like this, Ninja Tabbies over a immobile AD carry, you got to get in between them more quickly than that. Or you're going to be losing certain fights because you didn't block things that you should have blocked more sooner. Looking at the gold right now, there's really nothing huge that you can buy. We're gonna watch this real quick. It was a good ult to save your Graves. I think he gets out. Yeah, just barely, but he gets out. Your team shows up. This is where I think you tunneled a little bit, for sure. We're gonna rewind this. This is 3 people right here, right? That's one dead. Jinx is next. And then right here, that means there's still someone missing because Zoe did not come down yet. You were already quite low, and you made the decision to put yourself at the front of the team, which you are the tank, but look at this. Your Fior's plenty healthy to get in front here. I think you just get a little excited, wanting to chase down kills, but you have to remember to stay together. The closest person behind you is a very low HP Graves who can't walk up this close, and the healthy person that actually can get in here is still quite a few steps away. So rather than you going in first, you need to wait just a little longer and try to bring them in. If you back up rather than going to them and they continue to fight, that means they're going to come this way into your team rather than you going into them where they're stronger and they have their burst waiting for you. You do play it pretty well, especially with the shield up, and they still end up getting her. But that's just something to keep in mind. You always want to stay closer to your team, be closer to your help than the enemy are to theirs, because it's just going to stack more fights in your favor. We're going to skip ahead.
Blue team double kill.
Alright.
Blue team slain the dragon.
You're going for the Knight's Vow, which against their kind of
Killing
bursty DPS team to keep someone alive. It's an okay purchase, because I know you need the help in the armor, because Vi and Jinx are strong. Okay. This is an example where I think you could be more aggressive. This is where, like, the early game roughness has kind of been soothed a little bit. You know, you guys have scaled a little bit. You're level 10. Rather than waiting for Ashe to do this, like, which you could have done at any time, you look at the fact that this Soraka has 355 HP, right? You have 2,080 armor, not 80 armor, 138 armor. She has 58. She's very squishy, right? And Soraka needs her own HP in order to heal. Now, she still has her exhaust and her ult, so, like, there's bait potential here. But she's so extremely squishy here, and so is Jinx. Soraka can't really heal Jinx without help of herself. So, what you could do here, you could jump to this minion and initiate this fight yourself. Your ult is still down here, so, like, I can see why you wouldn't want to initiate. Actually, I'm not sure if it is. There's replay bugs between these two. But I think this is where you could afford to be more aggressive, right? You still have a movement speed advantage, kind of. Maybe against the Soraka, not the Jinx anymore. But you are very big and strong, and your 80 carry is actually doing some damage now. So rather than just kind of sitting around in this lane, once you have all this vision control and you see that, you know, Graves is here, and you just saw Zoe mid, you can probably afford to get a little more aggressive. This is what tanks are made to do. After you've scaled up and you got all this HP and armor, you got to get in there and get scrappy a little bit. Rather than waiting for Ashe to do this, I think you could have shown a little more aggression. We're going to keep going though. This is good. The kill on Singed is nice, but he kind of just walked at you guys. Do want to see how this fight goes. Alright, I think you probably should have backed after the turret, knowing that the Vi could run towards her healer of a support, but it works out because Zed and Graves clean everything up and get the buffs and get her. So I won't say that, like, that's too aggressive, because it ends up working out. When you're the only tank on the team like that, the only real dedicated tank, sometimes you do just have to man up and fight with your team, because your Graves was fed and he could clean it up. Sometimes you don't want to fight, but you have to. And even though you don't live and Ashe doesn't live, you guys win the fight in the end. This is where you're kind of mid-A ramming right now, right? This is the point in the game where it's like after 20 minutes, you know, Baron's on the map, but nobody really can do it just yet. Like, maybe, but not while everyone's alive. So this is where your ward focus needs to be on where's their split pusher and where would he go in order to reach us. when we're doing something elsewhere. So a lot of the big wards you should have would be here. Keeping this choke point warded is very important. You'd want to keep a pink here or here. Another good pink is in here, because a lot of times people ward over this wall. Maybe not so much in silver, but it is very valuable to have vision in this choke point in someone's jungle. Same thing on this side. Another good wards would be to keep one here. This might be a little too deep. It's very easy to die when you're going in this deep to ward, especially for someone that's strong, like a Vi with kills. So you would want to limit to stuff that really is just the route he would take. So if you only had 3 wards or 4 with a control, I'd prioritize this bush. Because Singe can't travel over walls, right? Except he had this flash. So you don't have to ward over like all these jungle walls as much if it was someone like, I don't know, Nidalee or Camille, who can take more creative gank paths. So against a Singe, you would want to ward here, ward here, ward here, and probably ward here. That way, anywhere he would go from top lane to try to catch you guys mid, it's covered. And you'll see him coming ahead of time so that you could react and move to safety. But much of your counter warding is pretty damn good. We're gonna speed it up because a lot of the warding is just kind of what goes on here. Then there's a big fight eventually. This is really just a lot of ward dancing. Ashe still needs her second item. They try to pick you, but you guys win the fight. I just want to go back and watch this really quickly. This is the fight you guys won. Excellent timing on your shield. Had you used it sooner, that Jinx probably would have gotten better DPS onto your Graves and potentially carried that fight. The fact that you waited to use your shield until after they'd kind of unloaded some damage on you, it's a good play on your part. I can't see who you're partnered to right now with your Knight's Vow. Ashe. Okay. This is actually a very important thing to note. If you're gonna buy Knight's Vow, you really should use it probably on the person who is more fed right now. So in this case, you couldn't really change it immediately on the fly right here just because of the way this fight happened. But this Graves is doing much more damage, and he's 2 levels higher than this Ashe right now. So I think, given this current state of the game, you should actually have your Knight's Vow on this guy. He's doing more damage, so you'll get more healing out of it, and I think he's just the bigger carry at this point. We're gonna fast forward here. Your whole team's trying to do Baron right now. They're gonna get it. Kind of a weird state right there where you just want to push and get your relic stacks off, but this Graves is so fed that there's some weird stuff going on. It's gonna happen sometimes. But if we go back, I do think you should have probably been somewhere else. Okay, so this happens again. Okay.
Blue team's turret has been destroyed.
They're doing just fine. Yeah, this is okay. It's not often you'll have teammates that are strong enough to do something like this. But in this scenario, I think you did fine. Maybe you could have been there and like helped create a turn, but this is fine. You're getting redemption here. This is where I have to disagree with you on the build path, I think. You guys are starting to turn around and get more aggressive here, so I think building redemption, which is kind of a wishy-washy item on Braum, like it's still good, but it doesn't help you do a whole lot more than you are already doing. So like this is where I think a Locket or a Zeke's would be way better to push your advantage in a team fight and like prevent the big Zoe and Vi burst. Whereas this redemption is like in these crazy fights where someone's diving Raka and Singed is running in the back line. The amount of people your redemption is going to hit might be you know, it's not guaranteed, and you're not an enchanter. So it's not that redemption is bad on you as a tank, but I would have opted for Zeke's or Locket here for sure. Your lack of magic resistance versus double AP and a Raka, who still, you know, does some damage, I think is a oversight. Right, Ashe wasted her ulti, but I don't think she knew you guys would burst him that quick. Your shields are pretty good. Unfortunately, they just have a lot of dive. I see where you're having trouble with the bind the singe dive combo. Like, you can get one, but not them both, or it's just a lot to stop. It's going pretty well, though, because, like, your Fiora's up here doing work, right? She got the inhib. You're getting the vision, and this is where you guys overstay. While this plays out, we're gonna look at Vi. She has how much movement speed? Her base movement speed with Trinity Force right now is 423. So when you guys are up this close to their base, like, look how much room. Like, their base is one screen away. Combine her base movement speed with the dashes of her Q, and you guys just are not fast enough to get away. It's late game, you know, it's past 25 minutes. You have to be very careful about how long you decide to stay on the enemy side of the map if you're somebody who's not fast. But moving forward, I want to keep this video under a half hour, and we are almost there. Okay, yeah, this is the rough fight that I think kind of seals the deal. Because the next fight that actually ends the game is you guys just getting split and caught out. Okay. This is also where I would say that your redemption was probably not that useful, right? You bought the components for that, which the heal and shield power without Guardian in this game, like, it's borderline useless. The redemption comes out, but, you know, it's not enough, right? So this item that you purchased actually ends up doing nothing. Combine that with the fact that you try to fight while your ultimate's still down, and you've already lost somebody, and this is just something that you guys can't really do as a team. You're not properly using the fact that you guys have inhib pressure, and you got picked, and then you still try to fight with a man down and no ultimate up, and your redemption's down. So the fact that they're still a team comp and can come online with, like, Jinx, Raka, then you get punished when you lose fights like this. Sometimes it's better to just concede and let them take what they want, better than to die and then they still get what they want anyway. Or maybe not give it to them, but, you know, let them knock at the tower wave after wave. You don't have to stand there and fight them just because they're grouped up. When your Graves was dead, I don't think you fight at all, right? Once your redemption is up and Graves is dead, you guys don't even want this fight anymore. Because this is where I think they kind of start to run away with the game. This next team fight really is just you guys getting caught. So in this scenario, this would be where you guys know you have to protect mid inhib, but your vision's actually quite good. Like, if we go just to blue side vision, you guys see the singed, you guys have got all the flank vision. Letting Fiora split. You got enough slows to kite the singe and stop his all-in, but this their comp is giving you guys some issues. This is a decent 4v4 here though. Unfortunately, Fiora loses her split, which puts more pressure on you guys. Nash gets killed. This Singe kind of just walks right in, doesn't he? Yeah. Your Ashe walked forward towards him. This is one of the things that kind of happens sometimes when you play support. Is that your AD carry kind of just gets themselves killed and no amount of protection that you can give them will save them. I also think this is another example of a time where your redemption was just, it wasn't that great, right? It didn't do a whole lot. Sure, you guys got a little HP, but, you know, you couldn't save the tower here. You know, you guys still had to back off. Something like Locket or Zeke's would be much more impactful. And it would offer you more protection than the 200 HP from Redemption. And you don't really scale with the heal and shield power on Braum either. But this is the fight that ends the game. You guys are 4, looking for a fight. There's just one problem here. This is your 80 carry, way over here. Zed goes in, and then he dies. And then you guys are trying to do Dragon 3v5, essentially. This isn't something that you can do. There's plenty of other fighters other than Vine Singed who could force a fight and dive aggressively like this and still beat you guys because it's a 3v5. I think they kind of just push on you guys and win here. Yeah, they take Baron. In summary, you played this game pretty well. Considering how bad the early game went and the fact that your Ashe's positioning is very wishy-washy, I think if you had different itemization and perhaps didn't, and your Ashe wasn't 2 levels under the Jinx at one point, I think this game would have been a little easier. But it felt like a very hard uphill battle because your 80 carry was behind all game. But I think that does come down to your responsibility as a tank level 1. Like, we're just going to go right back to it just to kind of hammer it home here. This is you know, at 2 minutes in the game, right? 30 seconds after laning phase starts, and you're down a lot of your HP with no bone plating, with both of your relic stacks. This is something you gotta fix. You gotta either drink your potions, you gotta not get poked, you gotta not lose so much on the red, you gotta take Guardian. But if you apply all of those things together, then this should happen less, if you're more mindful of it. So I think that kind of wraps it up. That puts us at about 32 minutes. I hope this is useful. And good luck in your next games.